Good evening. Welcome to the Dixie Fire East Zone Facebook Live community meeting. This is also in conjunction with the west side of the fire. I am Kim Osborne, Public Information Officer for the Great Basin Team 1. Great Basin Team 1 took over the fire this morning at 7 a.m. Currently our fire is at 765,000 acres, 765,000 acres, 635. We're at 48% containment. We have 3,817 people. We're going to first hear from our fire weather meteorologist, Mark Leffelbein, and he's going to give us an update on our weather.
Well, good evening. We have had some pretty strong winds today from the southwest, gusting up to 27 miles per hour. Our relative humidity is something that tells us how much humidity is in there, is something we watch very close on fires, and that fell down to around 10% today. And I don't think we have very much changing, at least over the next 48 hours. We do have a red flag warning in effect that is going to be in effect for Monday night and Tuesday. The reason why we're keeping it running like that is our winds are going to be pretty gusty, gusting up to 35 miles per hour both Monday and Tuesday, and those relative humidities will fall down to around 10% both days. Also Monday night, we don't think that ridgetop winds are really going to calm down that much. They'll calm down a little bit, of course, as the sun sets and the relative humidity will come up a little bit, but it's still going to be a fairly significant event. All of this is out in front of a very weak cold front that's going to come through late Tuesday. It'll cool temperatures down, so we'll be around 90 degrees Monday and Tuesday, but then lower 80s for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but still very dry air in place. Relative humidities will stay down around 10%. Winds will continue out of the west, southwest, and southwest through the entire period, but after Tuesday, we can expect them to be a little bit more reasonable with wind gusts, maybe 20 to 25 instead of gusting up to 35 miles per hour. And that concludes your weather update for the next few days. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Tobin Kelly, the Fire Behavior Analyst with Great Basin Team 1. So as Mark mentioned, that the weather today was hot and dry, and then we had the additional factor of the increasing winds, which definitely increased the fire behavior, as was noticed today with the large column that we developed. As he mentioned also, we're going to continue with hot and dry weather and even a little bit more windier weather. So talk a little bit about that. So in a lot of the areas of the fire that are contained, this hot and dry weather actually does help bring up some of the smokes that may be of concern. So that is one good thing that this hot and dry weather does, especially in areas that are in patrol status. Kind of looking at some of the areas that are of concern. I'll kind of start over here in Genesee Valley, where the fires have been backing actively down there. We expect that to continue even with the windy weather. Don't expect any kind of issues there from what we can see at this point. Over here, where the fire is sitting right above in the kind of an avalanche chute, there is some concern there with that moving down. But that is a known quantity, and so that is being watched, and operations will talk about that. As we move down around on Grizzly Ridge, all the way down through here and then up towards Mount Ingalls, you know, that's where the major amount of activity was today, where the column developed. And what happened is with the west-southwest winds, this has been maintaining a pretty even line. Today, earlier in the day, the big, large smoke column was shading this out, so it wasn't growing very much. So that allowed this corner to open up a little bit, and that's where we're getting a lot of the fire development from. A little later in the day, this evening, the wind did shift around more westerly, and we're getting some more activity out in direction towards Mount Ingalls. So we expect that to continue tomorrow. Potentially the wind is going to be a little bit more southerly, which would be advantageous for this particular edge of the fire, wanting to push it up into the Walker burn from 2019 that's holding very well. Those same southerly winds should be advantageous all the way back into Grizzly Ridge. There's a concern for this part of the fire right here, how that wind might mix down there. But generally, yeah, it's going to be hot and dry and windy, but the way the fire is sitting right now, we expect you know, similar growth that we've seen the last couple of days. It's just still going to remain very active, certainly some column development, but potentially what we're seeing is in the direction we expect it to go. So have a good night.
Thank you. Hello, Jeff Serber, line operations with Great Basin Team 1 with an update for today. Kind of starting out over here on the western side of the fire. There's still a little bit of heat left up in the wilderness that we continue to try to work on as we have time to hike folks in or take them up a dozer line with a UTV to work on that, since it's a little ways in there to do that. We're trying to tie that up. But we have other priorities that seem higher than that right now, but that is not growing so much as it just needs attention. So that's kind of what we're doing back there. With the hotter and drier weather, we had a lot of spots pop up today that showed smoke. They weren't necessarily spots that were going to cause problems as far as escaped fire, but they did cause concern on the part of individuals who saw them. So what we do is we get calls and we pursue each of those calls with our folks in the field. We'll call them on their radio and we'll ask them to send somebody out to those locations and talk to either the reporting party, or if we have a latitude, longitude, some kind of specific location we can go to, we'll go out there, put water on them, or identify the fact that they're well inside the black area where they have no potential to get out, and relay that information back to the concerned parties. So that went on quite a bit today with the hot, windy weather, and I'd expect it to continue over the next couple of days with some of those things showing up that hadn't shown up before. Moving over to what we call our Division Romeo over closer to Taylorsville. We've had a spot up here south of, or north of Grizzly Peak that has been a problem area. It worked its way into an avalanche chute and continues to be a problem, but it's so rugged in there. Walking firefighters down in there and trying to put a line around that perimeter is just not a safe activity. Not just so for walking purposes, but for fire activity when winds pick up and it heats up. So what we've done with that is drop a lot of water from out here, what we call the MIL MRB, which is a mobile retardant base. That's where they can mix retardant. We can put it in buckets for helicopters and we can fly back up there, drop it on there. Today we used just water because it was quicker, and we could put way more buckets on the fire than we could have if we'd used retardant. So the water doesn't last as long. It's not quite as effective, but last I talked to our air attack, that spot was knocked down real good for tonight, and we continue to address that each day to try to hold that into check till we can take action off some dozer lines that we have been constructed previously and currently above Taylorsville. These two dozer lines right here that we plan to tie this area back into the black eventually, and hopefully put that area to bed and not have it be a concern and not have it be a problem for Taylorsville. Moving on down, last night, if you saw a glow out there, that was a burnout operation between drop point 612 moving on down here towards 606. That was conducted during the night purposely to try to stay out in front of this fire that continues to advance to the southeast. As you recall, both of these were separate slopovers or spot fires that grew together, continue to advance southeasterly, and what we're trying to do is keep them from impacting Greenhorn and Kronberg and the other communities along 70. So what we did was we took it down here to drop point 606 last night, hung it up and kind of wrapped it up this check line, expecting that we might be able to slow down this corner, give us time to construct the rest of this line and other lines that we have that aren't shown on the map yet that are coming off of the old Walker 2019 fire, so that we could try to hook it out here and stop its forward advance. As you know, for the people who've been watching this thing for weeks, there's lines here, there's lines here. They've had varying success of holding this fire because of varying priorities. When a spot fire is over here and they have to drag stuff over to here to deal with it, it slows down their ability to actually stop the fire. So that's been a problem. It may continue to be a problem as this comes around. Right now we're burning. Today what happened was it spotted across this line about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we initiated a little bit of burnout along this line for about a half mile to 3/4 of a mile to stay up with that fire that progresses out to the southeast. All we want to do is keep even with it. We don't want to lay so much fire out here that we cause a problem with it advancing out to the east faster than it would naturally. So that's what we did today up there. Most of the smoke you saw in those columns you saw, 4 or 5 columns, were coming off of this area in here. Like Tobin said, the fire's out here on Mount Ingalls now, so it did advance quite a ways today with that southwesterly push. We'd expect it to continue doing that with all the weather reports that we get for south and southwest winds. In the future, we hear that the weather in the next couple of days might turn and start going more southerly than westerly, and that will be a good thing if it blows this fire back into the old Walker fire. So kind of that updates you kind of on what's going on right here. We're doing our best to contain this fire along this edge and wrap it back up into the old fire. We have contingency lines built out, which are dozer lines. Use masticators. We use heavy equipment, logging equipment, whatever we can get a hold of that'll make a line faster than humans to build lines out here in front of the fire. The CAL FIRE team that is assigned to the west zone of the fire is managing this spot because it's much easier access from Susanville than it is from here. So efficiency goes up when they manage this spot for us, even though it's shown in the east zone, which is this yellow line. They are coming down the highway and managing that for us because it's just more efficient to do it that way. They are building this dozer line. They've built dozer lines behind Milford on the south side of Milford. They're also looking at another dozer line here to tie into the Milford to Beckworth line and slow the fire spread or stop the fire spread out to the east as it tries to continue to advance. So we have probably between what is being constructed is currently in construction and all the way out to 395, there's probably 5 or 6 different lines that we are constructing to try to get far enough ahead of it so that as we burn, we can wrap it and get it back into something it can't burn through before it gets to us. So it's a constant struggle to stay in front of it and time our activity in a way that corresponds to the fire's activity with the expected weather. So that's what we're continuing to do in the next several days. I got a few questions handed to me, and I'll do my best to answer those. One of them is, what is the plan for around the area Mount Dyer? So Mount Dyer, if I understand right about where you're talking about, is this red area right here. That's near Mount Dyer, so I'm going to make the assumption there's Dyer Mountain, that you're considering this heat in here and this uncontained line right there. There's a good possibility that will be considered black line tomorrow, which would be contained fire line. So you might see that turn black on the map tomorrow. And then this internal heat, I don't want to say it's not a factor, but we don't go way into the interior of these fires and put out all that fire. We have limited resources, and if the fire doesn't have potential to escape because it's a mile inside the line or 2 miles inside where it's already black, we don't pursue that. We'll let that naturally do its thing and eventually go out so that we can use our personnel more effectively on the outskirts of the fire trying to put it out. So that's kind of, I hope I answered that question. If I don't answer your questions, feel free to ask them again or ask them in a different way so that our folks can ask me and I can come up with better answers than I have right now if I'm not answering these correctly. The next one refers to the Hamilton branch, Clear Creek, the peninsula. The peninsula is right here, and that is actually being managed by the west zone, so it's hard for me to answer that question. I would refer to the public information officers on the west zone of the fire. They could probably help answer that question better than I can. The west zone, east zone break is this yellow line right here, and that's on the other side of the line. Dyer, what I just talked about, is on our side, as you can see on this team's zone, I should call it. It is on our zone, but they actually have folks in here as well as us, so we're kind of teaming up on that piece right there and trying to take care of that. Then the other question is Highway 147, East Shore and Westwood. Westwood's here, East Shore's over here, 147 comes across, all in the east zone again, or excuse me, the west zone again, so that could be better addressed by those folks that deal with that stuff every day. Another one says getting spotting near Mussock and Squirrel Creek. The wind's pushing it away from 70 corridor. It sounds like maybe some specific information about that. So squirrel and muskox are right here, and the spotting that the question refers to, I'm thinking might be this area right here that we're expecting to move down to the north, but downhill towards Taylorsville. Squirrel and muskox are down in here, so I'd refer back to what we're doing in here as well as what our plans are in here. This dozer line right here would block off any fire that's left in here. It would block this fire from going south. This dozer line here will block this fire from moving out and heading north into Taylorsville. So squirrel and muskox are down here, so this is what we're doing with this. If you're referring to spot fires because you saw you saw fire on Grizzly Ridge, that was intentional fire, and we don't have spot fires that I know of right up there right now. This was all held in check real well. There was one area below a cliff band, below a rock band, that had where the fire did kind of slop over, but that's all lined and plumbed and taken care of. So there's no issue with that fire moving any farther. And then a couple more. Another one that I think appears to apply to the West Zone. In tonight's meeting, can you have them address what impacts they think the upcoming high winds will have on the scattered heat signatures that still remain within the Janesville burn area? I'm concerned that everyone on Ponderosa that's been unpacking all their stuff thinking it's safe because they never mentioned that there are still hot spots in there. The people interpret that as the fire's not a threat. These winds that are forecast are almost the same as those that started the Janesville spot fire 5 miles from the fire's edge. So I understand your concerns. When spot fires start that far away from the main fire, I'd be concerned no matter where I live. So I totally understand your concern with the upcoming winds and what they could do. Again, this is being managed by the West Zone. I'll do my best to say that they do have an open piece of line right here that they continue to work on with dozers and people every day. And the question asked about what impacts. The upcoming winds could have a huge impact on this portion of the fire. It could also pick up some of this stuff that's been latent, but this has run into the old burn. It's been there for several weeks. It's gone through a lot of fairly decent wind, and it doesn't appear that it has the potential to move through that fire all the way across. It may punk around and move in there a little bit, but we don't expect it to be able to travel all the way across. This area right in here, from what I've been told, it's still red, but the possibility exists that will be considered contained pretty soon. So I don't think there's a lot of potential for that to spot over into here. There's another piece that I think we're going to turn black tomorrow. It might be this one right here that will be considered contained tomorrow. Don't quote me, but I believe that's the case. And then over back to Janesville, that the CAL FIRE Team 1 is working actively on this. They have aircraft. They have all sorts of equipment at their disposal. I don't want to put a prediction out there that says it'll never happen because I won't do that. But with the wind, we're all super attentive to this wind event. So I would say if you have a specific question about that Janesville area that I haven't addressed, please refer it to the West Zone. One last one, I think. Question, has the Lake Almanor Peninsula had issues today? We have a home there, and some friends just contacted us because they heard something new about the peninsula. I have not heard anything new about the peninsula, and again, that I referred to that before as far as the West Zone. And then lastly, one that I'll answer, lots of people in Greenhorn, Kronberg, and Sloat wondering what's going on. So I hope what I explained is going on with this is what you're worried about. Greenhorn, Kronberg, Sloat, these communities, we're aware of all those communities along the I-70 corridor, and we are doing our best to get this handled with dozer line and using the prevailing winds to push that fire away from your communities, using the tools at our disposal and that I've already kind of explained beforehand. We did one last thing today. We used a lot of fixed wing retardant. That's heavy air tankers to quell this fire all along this dozer line. There was thousands of gallons of retardant put on that, so that as they continue to burn down that line, it'll be protected from spotting across that line, especially much stronger than it would have been otherwise. The prevailing winds are advantageous to us, but we also used retardant there to be extra sure that we wouldn't have spot fires that crossed over and caused problems for those communities. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. We're gonna go ahead and do an operational briefing from our west zone. I'd just like to mention there's a lot of questions coming in on Facebook. Some are for our east zone and some are for our west. So those that we don't answer tonight, we will address them on Facebook, and we'll get those done for you. So we'll go ahead and watch the video from the west side briefing.
Good evening. My name is Mike Wink. I'm Operations Section Chief with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 1. I'm here with your Dixie Fire West Zone E update. So we're going to start here in Branch 9, west of Warner Valley. No change. Continue to strengthen, mop up, and patrol all those lines over there in Branch 9. Up here in Branch 13 in the Shasta sector into the park. No change in the operations up there. They continue to find hot spots along the fire's edge, but everything's holding within their proposed containment lines within the park. Just outside the park, we came off of Prospect Peak, came around to Rail Canyon, all that's holding, and then above there towards the general area of Old Station. When I say Old Station, that means all the communities in that general area. Okay, there's primary line, there's secondary line, there's contingency line, and then there's additional lines around those values at risk up there, around structures, critical infrastructure, private property. They're in there with masticators, feller bunchers, skidders, and dozers doing fuels reduction in there, watching those values at risk. We come over here into Branch 16. The west winds that have been predicted have surfaced this afternoon, a little ahead of schedule. Nothing drastic, but enough to cause the fire to spread to the east. So here in Branch 16, the fire did come out of the Caribou Wilderness. It did cross our primary line. It's right close to our secondary line. We have a contingency line right next to Highway 44, and then we're looking at Highway 44 and the ones beyond that. So it's still within our lines, our proposed lines, but there is a possibility with the increase of these west winds, we could continue to see fire movement to the west that exceeds our capability of containment and control with ground resources, with engines, crews, and dozers. Okay, as we come below Highway Branch 16 down towards Westwood, no change. They're in there looking for hot spots. There's isolated islands and pockets of fuel in there. Continued calls for service in the Chester, West Almanor area, and in the Meadow. Remember, this is the general reference area of the Meadow. Some peat moss smoking in there, some trees along this piece. No threat to the line. We have resources in there. Come down around to the Janesville branch. Continue to look for hot spots on Janesville grade. The big message is going on there right now is we're building lines off the Janesville branch south towards the Beckworth complex and north towards the Susanville Valley to create catcher's mitt. We got red flag over here in the Sacramento Valley. We're right here in the middle. We won't be in red flag conditions until tomorrow or the next day. Okay, but we're right in the middle, so we are being influenced by those things that are happening around us. Oh, we also have a red flag just to the north as well. So coming back down here, this piece in the east zone that's coming off of Grizzly Peak does have the potential to have fire spread that goes to the east. That's why we're putting these lines in. That's why we're also in Milford and along the Highway 395 corridor, putting in additional dozer lines at the toe of the slope, protecting those values of risk, making sure they have dozer lines around them as we head south on 395. So there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of potential for fire growth and extreme fire behavior. We've been telling all the firefighters on the fire for the next 24, 48, 72 hours to expect they could experience extreme fire activity and rapid fire growth. Everyone's been briefed to that. Everybody knows red flag is all around us and it's coming here in the near future, and to expect that. Okay, the 395 corridor has a lot of fire behavior in there of extreme erratic behavior, from the Eagle Fire in 1989 to the Beckworth when it came into Doyle to now Janesville just recently. So that's what's going on currently. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Patrol Commander Carson Wingfield from the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. I have been operating as the incident commander in the Plumas County Emergency Operations Center since July 18th. This has been a long, ongoing event for all of us in the county. There currently are very robust operations going on right now in Plumas County with regard to recovery and response efforts. We're working with Cal OES and FEMA with regard to the recovery efforts. There is a whole separate group within the county organization that is branched off to begin those efforts and make sure that they continue seamlessly. With the in addition to that, in the recovery, we are in constant evaluation of those areas that we have deemed to be an evacuation warning or under mandatory evacuation as quickly as we can, and in corroboration with the incident IC. We are looking to move those restrictions, and our goal ultimately is to get people back home, or only when it's safe to do so. The utility companies are working very hard to stand up infrastructure, as well as water, power, anything else that needs to be repaired, so we can make that happen. With regard to the situation on Grizzly Ridge, we are closely monitoring the situation in the response realm of things. We're in constant communication with Incident Command and we do have evaluation points should there be a need to issue additional warnings and or mandatory evacuations. We will try and, closely monitoring it to make sure that the timing is right so that we don't unnecessarily impact anybody from their normal lives. I would like to say that if anybody is uncomfortable, there is active fire burning along the ridge tops there. If you're uncomfortable being there, you by no means do you have to wait until we issue any kind of a warning or evacuation. If you would be more comfortable going someplace else, please do so. Please make arrangements at this time to move large livestock. If that's something that takes a little bit of time, and we can get that moving quickly. There is an evacuation center set up at the Holy Names Catholic Church at 108 Taylor Street in Portola. It has been and will continue to operate should any further changes come about. And then with regard to current evacuation map, please go to community.zonehaven.com for a listing and status of all the evacuation areas within Plumas County. And in closing, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of the agencies and personnel that have been in Plumas County to assist us during this long and arduous event. Thank you.
Good evening. Chris Carlton, Forest Supervisor here on the Plumas. Couple of updates for everybody. Thanks for making time to join us. So first, I want to remind everybody, we do have those closures out on the forest. They remain in effect. They are planning to reevaluate those on the 6th. I haven't heard anything kind of one way or the other, but looking at the weather ahead, might be good for us to just be prepared that those may get extended for a little while. Conditions haven't really changed out there, but that's not a decision that's going to be made here at the forest. That's our regional forester. So we do have, as mentioned, red flag conditions. I think we've heard the forecast and we've heard from the operations on both sides. We really do need to be prepared and looking ahead, and we have the potential for some more large fire growth over the next couple of days. We have those dry conditions remain. and that extreme fire behavior is possible. The teams, both sides have a plan. They're working that plan aggressively. They've got a lot of firefighters out there putting in the lines, doing everything they can. But we do know we've seen that behavior pretty active this season so far. So as we see it, we heard from the sheriff. I'd encourage everybody, make sure that you have your stuff prepared. If you are in an evacuation warning, just be ready in case that becomes necessary to go. Question came up on the last meeting about recovery plan, and just given that we got maybe a couple of busy days ahead of us, we can maybe talk about that afterwards. We are working, both the Lassen and the Plumas, on a recovery plan post-fire, but we'll get some more details on that as we get a little bit further along. Team transition. I wanted to, we do have a new team up here, and just going back and doing the math, we are at about 60 days fighting fire on the Plumas here. I know the Lassen's not far behind that. It's been a long season already. We were counting it up, and we have transitioned. This is the 6th team on the Plumas. This is the 9th team so far, if you count the 3 CAL FIRE teams that have transitioned in and out on the Dixie, between the Beckworth complex and the Dixie. So it's been a tough season, and we recognize that. I really want to appreciate all the cooperators. Carson talked about it a little bit, who have stood side by side with us. We really have been battling this whole season together with our law enforcement partners, Caltrans, CHP, and everybody. And a lot of the folks on the ground are our own folks. It's members of our communities, our firefighters, first responders, business owners, grazing permittees. It's been a long season so far, but I also recognize that we're making a lot of progress out there. We got a couple tough days ahead, but we've got a lot of tough days already behind us. So really continue to appreciate the coordination and the partnership we have to get through this. So thank you. Hope you're staying safe, and let's get through this together. Have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Evans Quo, Incident Commander for Great Basin Team 1. If you joined us a couple days ago when Jerry McGowan with California Team 1 was still in place and hosting this meeting, he introduced us as the team from the adjacent geographic area to the east. So the Great Basin, we're pretty much, all of our team members are from Nevada, Utah, and southern Idaho general area. So we've been on the ground for about 48 hours now, and in that time we've come to really recognize the challenges that this particular fire has brought to this area, as well as the impacts. I mean, it's not only just the extreme long-term drought conditions that this area has been impacted with, but also very heavy fuel loading, very steep and inaccessible terrain, as well as these periodic wind events. When you add all that up together, I mean, that's just the recipe for very large fire growth. And in our business, we call it resistance to control, which is extremely very, very high. In other words, the fire resists our efforts to control it almost to a very extreme level. The wind events that we've been getting periodically, unfortunately, we started having the first one today, and it's going to be going probably through either Tuesday or Wednesday into next week. So this is where we're going to be challenged once again. And as you've all seen with these wind events and what the fire has done in the past, yep, we fully recognize what it can do. We've been working with our partners, the local host agencies, to truly come up to speed as far as where are the priority and critical actions that we need to take because of what you guys have seen before in the past. So we are trying to live off or base our actions based on what has worked in the past and areas that we really need to focus on. As you heard our operations talk, both from the East Zone as well as the West Zone, we do have plans in place, and we are actively and aggressively trying to implement those. We're working very closely with the CAL FIRE Team 1 on the West Zone, and between the two of us, we're trying to make best use of the resources that we have, put them in the areas that are imminently at risk, and move them around, and so that if we can pick up one side that's being impacted very badly by the winds, that has high risk to values. We can surge resources that way, and then when another area picks up because maybe the wind is coming from a different direction. So that's been our mode forward on how we share resources and respond to the different priority areas depending on what the winds do. I think you all can recognize that the situation we're in right now with Western fire season is resources are very tight. There's only a finite number of firefighting resources available, and you can believe that as much as we're asking and requesting for additional resources, all the other fires in the area are also doing the same thing, and we all have values of some sort, communities, highways, infrastructure, what have you, that we're all trying to protect. So the folks that prioritize the incidents, they're doing a yeoman's work of trying to identify who has the highest needs, when, the timing, can we move some resources to one fire, they take care of something, and then we shove them over to another fire. And that's been kind of working for us, but right now in the situation that we're in with the resource shortage, that's probably what we're going to have to live with. So the last thing I really want to emphasize is we're new to this fire. We just got here a couple days ago, but we are committed. We're here with you. We're going to be right by your sides throughout all this, depending on what happens. If the fire continues to push us hard and challenge us, we're going to be reacting with developing those plans for those areas and putting in contingency plans, working with the cooperating sheriffs, law enforcement, and county emergency managers to enact additional plans for areas that might be impacted in the future to provide for the public safety. So to the best of our ability, we're going to be keeping you folks informed as things progress. But as always, if being as dynamic as these fires are, if things change on us, and we have to enact or increase an elevated evacuation warning for an area or an order, then please respond and help us by leaving the area. So with that, thank you very much for joining us, and I'll turn it back to Kim.
Thank you, Evans. We have a couple of questions that came on Facebook. Again, there was a lot. Some of them are for the other side, the West Zone. So we will be answering a few of the questions, and then we will answer the rest on Facebook in the chat. So I'll give you a microphone here. Is it on? I think it's on. There we go. Okay, so the first question is, can we expect the same amount of air support for the next few days?
In general, yes. What happens is those aircraft are assigned to this fire. If a new fire starts, a lot of the time that's prioritized to try to keep it small, so we may lose some aircraft to another fire, an initial attack fire, and that is typically returned to the fire that it's assigned to as soon as possible if they catch the fire that they respond to. If they don't catch that fire, sometimes some of that aircraft can go away and stay away, but typically it returns to our fire if it leaves.
Okay, next question. Tell us about the Davis Group.
The Davis Group, it's not shown on this map. We have a variety of different map styles that are created. This one doesn't show it, but it's on some of the maps. I'm thinking the question probably comes from someone that's looked at another style of map that says Davis Group on it, and it's right down in this area. A group is a group of resources that are mobile. A division is a segment of the line or a segment of the perimeter of the fire edge. So you'll see these kind of parenthesis looking marks on the map. That's a division break between two segments of the perimeter of the fire. This is considered a branch break. A branch has multiple divisions in it. You can see branch 25, branch 30, that's the branch break between them. That's their turf, let's call it, and this is the other party's turf. And that mobile group of resources, Davis Group, would be able to move around where they're needed and work for several different perimeter areas on the fire. They're not assigned to a specific segment of the fire or a specific division. They're mobile and they can go where they're most effective.
Okay, we'll go with this last question. Is Portola in danger?
I understand the question. There's danger to a lot of the communities, whether it be Quincy or any of the other communities along 70. There's danger out here. There's varying levels of danger. So if you see fire across Grizzly Ridge, there's going to be some activities that occur by law enforcement and others that will lead to possible evacuations of some of these areas, because as the danger gets closer, that's what happens. I'm probably stating the obvious for a lot of people who have watched this thing progress. So not immediate danger for Portola, but you're not out of the woods as far as the potential for this fire to come down and impact those communities if we're unsuccessful here. One other thing I didn't mention earlier, we even have used the retardant and put retardant in train cars, and the railroads actively working along the railroad, both spraying retardant along the tracks and that. So we are looking beyond this. What are we going to do if something happens and we lose the ability to hold this line? The Greenhorn subdivision has been totally lined with dozer line and has water plumbed throughout it. We have engines there, you know, in the event this causes a problem. So we're proactive that way. But as far as immediate danger, no. As far as future danger, it'll be gauged on our success in this area.
Thank you, Jeff. That will conclude our Dixie Fire East Zone Facebook Live meeting. We will have another meeting on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. and we will again have the invite on Facebook. So we will see you then. Thanks for